It is a great pleasure and a great honor to welcome Graham Lindsey on this show. He is a wonderful traditional folk musician from Ottawa. How are you today, Graham? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here.
Yeah, so I actually got to know you from last year's Canadian Folk Music Awards. You perform under the outfit known as the Broken Bridges, which consists of
That's right.
two young talents, Fern and Willow Marwood. I got to know them
Absolutely.
first, and they were friends with another great talent from Peterborough, Irish Millie. So that's how I came to know you. So tell me about the formation of the Broken Bridges.
Well, it was in 2020. I had just come back from Europe, and I reached out to Fern and Willow, and I'd asked if they wanted to do a recording of a track or two, or a few tracks to make an EP, and they were excited about that. So that's a really good start. And then of course with that was in January of 2020, and of course everything stopped in March of 2020, and with that. We had to figure a way to continue, because we didn't. I just really, throughout the whole pandemic, I refused to say, okay, well, we can't do this because of X, Y, or Z. So for that reason, we decided I dropped off a briefcase with a computer, an audio interface, cables, mic stands separately, and microphones and everything. I said, I'm just going to have to walk you through how to set this all up. And so we did FaceTime, so we could actually see what they were doing, where the mic placement was and the fiddles, and I was listening to it. I thought, okay, that'll probably work. So I'd actually control my own computer in their house. I'd hit record, and we do that. And then that progressed. There was an injury, a broken bone that happened for one of them, and that meant that the recording had to stop. The process was stalled for a couple months while she recovered, and then we picked up. But when we did, we had bubbled together. So I was living alone, and people who lived alone were allowed to connect with one other family. So they were fortunate enough to gain me, or more likely, more accurately, I was fortunate enough to gain them as a family that I could hang with. We had lots of rehearsals and just hangs and jams, and that really was the formation of the group.
Mm-hmm. So who was the one who unfortunately broke a bone? Was it Fern or was it Willow?
It was Willow, and she was riding a horse.
Oh, okay.
So we have a band rule: no riding horses
Mm-hmm.
before gigs and recordings.
Oh yeah, they are big horse girls. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so what happened was, or what regularly happens is they'll shoot promos for our shows on horseback.
Mm.
What was our rule? Yeah.
Yeah. So you handled all the technical aspects of it, right?
Yes, my in addition to being a musician, part of my day job is as I do video production. Especially in the last few years, I've done a lot of live streaming.
Mm-hmm.
My first live streaming started in 1998. When I was back in university, and so the tech side of things is what I do. I also do website design, but music is your focus, and that's what I adore. So
I see. Yeah. I had to sort of learn how to do these technical things while I was doing my podcast. At first I thought it was rather simple. This show actually started as a radio program, so the technical aspects was handled by the people at the radio station. But because COVID happened, I had to do it at home. So there were a lot of figuring things out. And there admittedly were more than a few episodes in my feed where the audio is not as desirable. Like there are times when my voice is too big and the guest's voice is too small, or when there are like so much background noise because I didn't use the microphone right here. But yeah, so I think I'd like to hear you talk about like how you come to learn the technical aspects needed to record music.
Sure. It's mostly been trial and error, but also speaking with people who know a lot more than myself. And I think that's a focus through my entire life. I realize what I know, but I also, more importantly, know what I don't know. So I've played with a number of really great musicians over the years, in my own, whether it's solo career or in my in the bands that I've been in before I started playing with the Broken Bridges. One such musician, his name is Paul Mills. He's a great producer of music. Sorry, I should say a retired producer of music, in terms of production, but he's producing as in playing music now. And in his retirement from a life of working at the CBC and then having his own company, and he's definitely a mentor of mine. He's given me tips and tricks over the years on how to mix. That's one example. The person I used to mix and produce, and I should say be the mix engineer rather, for my first album. His name is Rob Heaney. Unfortunately, he's since passed away. He was out of Montreal, Canada, and we would go back and forth, and we had this really great relationship where we would do screen sharing. He would share his audio with me, and there was only a 6 or 7 second delay. There's only a little bit of a, okay, we'll go back 6 seconds exactly from there, but I was looking at his screen, and I was acting as the producer of that album, and he was fixing stuff and tweaking stuff on the fly, but he was also teaching me. And really, that's the most important thing about working with somebody, I think, when they're able to explain, learn, and help another person learn. Really, that's all that matters to me. It's, it's good people working together, sharing knowledge, and we're all improving. We're all getting better as a result.
Awesome. Yeah. So tell me about the European vacation that you undertook before going back to Canada to record, was it the album?
Absolutely. So it wasn't actually a vacation. So I've now, as of right now, when we're recording this, I've now been to Sweden 6 times.
Wow.
The first time was in 2017. A friend of mine, essentially, he asked me. We met in Toronto in 2013. I hadn't written any music of my own. But he gave me a book of his tunes, and I had been playing music then. So he gave me a tune book of his compositions, and then 3.5 years later, somebody in the Ottawa area asked if I would play a concert as part of the festival. And then, of course, my answer was, "Oh, heck yeah, that'd be great." Unfortunately, well, or maybe not unfortunately, just one of the challenges was I didn't have any albums out, so there was nothing to sell, and I really wanted to make sure that I looked professional as well as being professional and sounding great. So I had to find a band, I had to work up arrangements, and I had to find some merchandise to sell. So whether it's a CD or something else, and then I remembered, the tune book that my friend Andreas gave me. I am a graphic designer, so I could put together a tune book, and I've written a few tunes by that point. So every one of my 17 tunes went into my first tune book, and I sent it back to Andreas, and he posted. I sent it to him via mail, not as a PDF, and he messaged back a week later saying, "Wow, I've tried all your tunes. I will put your tunes into the hands of one of my orchestras." I was a little confused, and I genuinely didn't know what any of that meant. I thought, oh goodness, Google Translate must be broken, but he was typing in English. So, and so I closed my laptop. I was just completely. It's the first time anything like this had ever happened. So I just closed my laptop, and then I opened it up about 2 hours later. Still there. So I clicked like, and then, still confused, closed it. I'd done some researching, and the closing line in his post was, "You should come to Folk at Heart." And it was just words that didn't make any sense to me. So I opened the laptop the next morning. I looked it up. Folk at Heart is a festival. It's in a town called Örebro, west of Stockholm by 2 hours. And essentially, I typed the words, "I'm in." And once I say I'm in, I don't commit lightly. I don't sort of say, "Oh, sure, why not?" unless I'm really in. So it turns out what he meant was he would fly me to Sweden, have me as a participant in the festival. He put me in the roster with his. There's a group called the Ad Hoc Orchestra, and there's a group called Vestmanna Folk, or more in English pronunciation would be Westmanna Folk. So those two groups played some of my tunes, and I played some of their tunes. That started to be the way that I integrated into into the local scene there. And then I guess that was the first year. The second year, I already had in mind that I might be able to record some music with Vesnana Folk, and we and so I talked with Andreas, and he actually secured a little bit of money from the festival as a grant. That I mean, he paid it, I guess, to them directly so that money would stay in Sweden. But they produced something for me, and they had something as well to show for it. So they recorded two of my tunes. So they have nickel harpas, which are the keyed fiddles, keyed harp, I guess is what they call them. Sorry, and then lots of fiddles. There's a piano, bass guitar, guitar. Yeah, just an amazing couple of recordings that never would have happened if I hadn't just on a whim, been given a book and then given a book back, and it's a neat friendship that's built up over the years, and that's the genesis of those two tunes, and they're called From Away and Whiskey Soup, from the first album called Trad Head.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I find it quite impressive that there's an interest for Canadian Celtic folk music in Europe, especially in Scandinavia. I think last year, Irish Millie, who I've become friends with, she traveled to Denmark for a few weeks to do that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I was super happy to hear that she was traveling in Denmark, and I've been working in Sweden, and I know my first memory of that first year at the Folk at Heart Festival was the dancing. And I think when it comes to, like, all this music is dance music. It's originally would have been dance music. So if it's unless it's incredibly a term Celtic music, and especially Quebecois or Newfoundland Celtic music, is crooked. So if it's got an extra beat or an extra bar, sometimes that will be referred to as a crooked tune. So if it's just a straight 1, 2, 3, 4, and that goes through the whole tune, it can be easy enough to dance to. So the pieces that I was playing, especially my first time, people had never heard the music before, specifically my tunes, but they were just all dancing to it, and they were doing traditional Swedish folk dances, which is amazing. And I think the power of music really is and I don't mean to say that Canadian music isn't in demand, but the power of the music that I think that Millie and I bring, and all the others who travel, really is the joy of it. So whatever music it is we're creating is being picked up, and the joy of it is really being enjoyed.
Of course. So you recently brought your music to the Canadian West Coast, where
right.
you met two of the show's other previous guests, Annika Wilson and Danielle Leonard. They're very sweet people. So tell me about your West Coast travels.
Well, I got back 2 days ago, and I'm already missing them. They are wonderful friends who I really didn't know terribly well. I mean, I knew a little bit before April, but not a lot. So I'm fairly heavily involved with Canadian Folk Music Awards. I'm on the board, and so when I traveled out west this year, they were there, and we just went out for dinner after one of the nights, and we got talking, and we said, well, geez, we should just get together for a jam. So we got together for a jam before I left, and I'd only met them once before. The previous year I was out there last summer as well, and so I started playing with the two of them, and we realized, oh my goodness, this is super fun. And I said, would you guys be interested and available for a festival that I'll be playing later this summer? So I was hired for a festival in Mission, BC, called the Mission Folk Music Festival, and I asked them if they'd be interested and available. They said they'd love to, which was just a pure joy. And I had on the weekend, just this past weekend, one of the best musical experiences of my life when we had. In Canada, they're on festival stages. They do what are called workshops, and it's something that's not just in Canada. It's a lot over North America, and it's where you basically put two artists or two or more artists together that haven't necessarily been together before. So I'll call it my band. It was known as, Graham Lindsey, but it's basically my band, Graham Lindsey and band. We were put on stage next to a group called Sky Consort. And Sky Consort with Emma Björling, also from Sweden. So they play Scandinavian music, Quebecois music. They sang sea shanties, and the synergy was just absolutely amazing. So being able to play with Danielle and Annika in that situation was just such a treat, and I can't wait to go back. And I'm getting ready. We've already started talking about, okay, when will our next tour be, and how can we get to play together, because they're just brilliant musicians, and what a lot of fun.
All right. Yeah. I look forward to having all three of you on, like, to talk about those things, your upcoming tour. Yeah.
That'd be great. Anytime.
So I actually got to know of the Canadian folk music scene via the Canadian Folk Music Award, mainly because Millie, I know, was nominated for it for the first time back in 22. And I understand that this year's award show took place in Vancouver, right? So that's where Annika and Danielle resides. And yeah, tell me about how you've come to be involved in the board of that award show.
Absolutely. So in 2012, it goes beyond that, like back before that. In, I guess, 2009, a band that I was playing with was up for an award, and they, in Ottawa, they showed up. I mentioned Paul Mills initially, or earlier, the guitar player and producer. He was the guitar player for that band. That band was called the Sarah Burnell Band. They showed up for the awards, and it was held in Ottawa, and it was easy for me to show up and attend. And I had a blast there. And then sort of as we kept going, I knew the Canadian Folk Music Awards existed, and I always wanted to go, because it's a really good community in the Canadian folk music community, and I felt really involved because I'd been going to folk music conferences since 2007, and so I was starting to build the network of really solid friends who we see we're on the same wavelength, and so in 2012, a good friend of mine. His name is Rick Barron, and he was up for an award for his album. He wrote an instrumental album, and he said to me, "Well, it's really a shame that you're not going to be out in St. John, New Brunswick on these dates." And I said, "Actually, I've just booked a flight to see my partner in Halifax, and I don't have a return ticket yet." He said, "Okay, well, we can get you there, and if you want, you can play, and we'll have a good time." So I attended and played the Canadian Folk Music Awards as a supporting musician, supporting one of the nominees, and I started to talk to people there, and they said, we're looking for, we might be looking for someone who does website work. If you're interested, it's a volunteer board. It's a working board, meaning it's not just a board that says we want to do this, and we have a big team to do that work. So the people on the board are actually the ones who do the work and actually make the event happen. A couple months later, I was asked to join the board, and I was on the board then. And I followed through. I believe in, like I said earlier, when I said to Andreas, I'm in. Once I was on the Canadian Folk Music Awards board, I was very much in, and very much looking forward to helping however I could, because I felt that the Canadian folk music community really has given a lot to me, just in terms of friendships and opportunities, and just many things. And if I could give back in some way, I would be very happy to. And so time went along, and then I was added to the executive as a co-president, and one of the founding board members. He was my other co-president. His name is Grit Laskin, and he builds wonderful guitars. He's a founding member of the board of directors. The two of us were co-presidents until I guess it would be 2022. And then he stepped down from the board after 17 or 18 years working on the awards, and then I became president, and that's the job I'm very proud to have now.
Yeah. So you are a web designer / creator, and I do podcasts. So both of these gigs and occupations would not be available without the internet. It's realizing that it's like the same way as a cab driver realizing that his job would not be possible without cars. Um, yeah, horse-drawn carriages are still available, but that's besides the point. So I wonder if there's any overlap between your work as a web designer as well as your work in music.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, so think of how musicians would have to tour. Like I wasn't touring pre-internet, but lots of my friends were, and so I guess the basics of it would be, you'd have a physical press kit that you'd have to send out, you'd have to mail to people, photos that even if they were on a memory stick, you had digital photos that people could print out. You'd have to mail that to people. So that's the tip of the iceberg. But these days you have what are called electronic press kits. So those would be on your website. You've got the ability to do interviews just like this. Normally we'd have to do the phone style of interview, which would be fine, but you wouldn't have the video that we've got. Just any number of things. I've actually done this is well, during the pandemic, it forced us to do a lot of this, and this being video conferences, video everything, and a lot of us a lot of us were and felt very isolated. So what I did during the pandemic, I saw a friend of mine from Newfoundland, a fiddler named Emilia Bartalis. She played a pre-recorded set of tunes. I think it was just by herself, and it gave me the idea. Wait a second, we probably I played along on a guitar. And I thought, we've got to be able to do traditional music like like an Irish session style Zoom call. So what we actually would do is at some points we'd have up to 12 people. So zoom into 12 boxes. We'd have 12 people gathering together, and then everybody else would mute. Somebody would play some tunes, and everybody else you'd see them but not hear them playing along because of the lag, that sort of thing. And then we chat. And without that, in the last few years, we would have been a very, very different society. I think there would have been a lot more mental health issues, and that's something that I know Fern Willow and I are very, very much in support of positive mental health for everybody, and recognizing that not everybody has that. And I think technology for us, I've gone a little bit off track. How would my job as a musician be that? But I think it's so pervasive in society. You really don't. It's almost impossible now to figure out how life would be without the internet, because we're on our devices all the time. We're on computers all the time, and it just does. There are layers and layers and layers of how that affects everything.
Of course, we've collectively lost 3 years of our lives due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, while I would admit that the range of activities and possibilities of things that we can do would be, sharply shortened without the internet, I would say that our weird over-reliance on the internet during those pandemic years have exacerbated those mental health problems that you were discussing. So, of course, one, a personal note, how did you survive COVID? And two, how do you suppose, as a non-young person, to
Excuse
resolve
me.
to help with, I guess, young people's mental health problems?
I'll ask you again in a minute, just to refresh my memory on the first or on the second question. But how did I get by through? How did I get through? I refuse to say that we can't do certain things. I refuse to say, well, we have to cancel this. I'm very proud of our board of directors at the Canadian Folk Music Awards, because we were the first national event to not cancel. Our event, the National Canadian Folk Music Awards, was held, but it was all online. But we had something that was on April 4th, 2020. We were I mean, I don't think I'm overstating this. We were a beacon for some people who, you know, we were noticed, we were recognized because wow, a national event is not canceling, and we were strong about that. We met on March 12th, and we said we will not cancel. We will do something. We will recognize this year's nominees. So to me, that set the tone for my entire well, I think even now, you know, saying, oh, we can't do this. Well, when I delivered a briefcase of stuff to Fern and Willow, that was you know, we can do this. We're going to do this. We're not going to let you know, the situation, the pandemic, a terrible situation. We're not going to let that completely kill everything. Sorry, killing is a terrible word. We're not going to let that mute everything that we're doing as musicians. You know, we've got to find ways to get together, and you know, so that's why the Zoom sessions where one person could play at a time, but we were still a community. We were chatting between. There was, I mean, I've done a lot of work with an organization called Home Roots, and they're out of Winnipeg, Manitoba. They used to do house concerts across the country. Before I got involved with them, they had I can't remember how many routes, but they canceled a year and a half of tours because they knew we're not going anywhere anytime soon. They did that in March, and within 2 days, and again, this is not me, but they had online concerts starting to happen. They handed over the keys to their Facebook account, and they let an artist do a streamed concert. This is on March, I believe it was March 18th was the first streamed concert, and it was an artist saying, here's my PayPal. I think they called it a tip jar. You know, if you're enjoying what you're hearing, please consider paying some money, because they had no income. And so how did I get through it? I gave a lot of my time away to making sure that anyone else who had any questions, because I mentioned I've been streaming since 1998, not consistently, but you know, just you know, I started then, and I've done it over the years. But I've been doing a lot of streaming since 2015, and because I know about all the software that you need. I mean, people didn't know really what OBS was, but now it's just everyone understands. Oh, OBS, that's the thing you use to stream video to stuff, you know. But people would call and say, hey, you know, can you, because they'd heard through somebody, or they knew that I was doing a streaming show or something. They said, can I ask a question about this? And I always would say, yeah, absolutely, because and I couldn't, and it was partly, and I never charged for it, for the initial call or anything. If you know, in a few instances somebody had follow-up questions, I would be very happy to say, okay, great, you know, if this is worth something to you, then absolutely. Yeah, it just all it all kept me sane, because I got to talk with a lot of people. So I was on Zoom a heck of a lot, working with Home Roots, helping other people, just doing a lot of things. But then we got into through Home Roots, we got into things like streaming concerts and Zoom based concerts. So as recently as a few months ago, I was doing a Zoom based concert with an Ottawa based artist named Lynn Miles. She's a Juno winning artist. She's a wonderful friend, great songwriter, great singer, and she's got a very loyal fan base. And so what I've been doing is all of these different things to try to make sure that the world doesn't stop, and I don't mean the world doesn't stop, but individual people's worlds don't stop, and that kept me going. I mean, it kept me very tired on many days, but it really got seeing each person do a concert. I did concerts with Lynn Miles, and there's another musician, James Keelahan, that I did a lot of one-on-ones with. And we just had fun, you know. And then what I try to do, like, bring it back to what I do as a musician. Someone this past weekend, a good friend, said that the joy and the energy that we have on stage spills over. And so when I can do that anywhere, that's like, I'm always trying. I'm not even trying to smile. I'm always smiling, because they're all, I somehow can find things to smile about. And when Lynn and I especially, and when James and I are talking and joking, even if the other people aren't engaged in the actual verbal conversation between the two of us, it's it that sort of thing allowed people to sit back and just smile and laugh. One last example: the Ottawa Grassroots Festival happens every April. So of course, April 2020, for an entire in-person festival, there was no chance to cancel everybody to pivot. Like everyone said that word, use the word. There wasn't a chance to turn a live 4-day festival with 3 or 4 stages perhaps during the day and all that, turn that into an online thing. That just didn't happen. It was led by a visionary named Bob Nesbitt, and he's since passed, but he phoned me up very early on, and he said, Graham, we're not going to have a festival this year. This is weeks, a month and a half, 2 months before the actual festival was held. So he said, we're not going to do a festival this year. We can't. It's a pandemic. Nobody will be allowed to be out and socializing. But we're gearing up right now for next year, and it's going to be online. So we had lots of time to think about it. It ended up being entirely Zoom based, so people could see back and forth. And it's one of my proudest moments, because the feedback from that festival was, this is like the Ottawa Grassroots Festival always was, because everyone could see each other. It was a wonderful sharing experience for everybody, and it was like we were all together, because it was just virtually. And so yeah, there are challenges. I don't mean to belittle the I don't mean to say everything was possible, because everything wasn't possible. But if I couldn't do one thing, I'd try to find another way to do it. And that was how I kept my mind active, and how I kept people kept people in my circle, and kept people having fun, and enjoying the music.
Right. So the second part of the question was that,
Thank you.
as a non-young person,
Still take obsession to that.
how do you help with the growing rate of mental health problems among young people these days? Like, you can do it in music, but are there other tools in your toolbox, so to speak?
I think it's too big for one person to solve anything. But I think starting the conversation is a really important one. That's the key thing. And just being there to check in on people. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. There's a friend of mine by the name of Anita McDonald. And she was playing music at the time, and she is still a great friend. She texted me early in April, and she said, "Hey, how are you doing? Are you shack wacky?" And I ended up turning that into a tune title for me, a tune of mine, because I was doing a flute tune series at that point. But really, it was checking in, just making sure that hey, how are you doing? I acknowledge that this is kind of crappy right now, but how are you holding up, really? And then with that, really, like yeah, I mean, I took that to heart, because she checked in on me, and I was pretty busy, but I would also always try to check in on my friends, and try to check in on people I knew weren't having as easy a time. And I think that's something that's not necessarily in my tool belt from a technical standpoint, but it's something that we can all do. I'm really proud of Fern and Willow for something they did recently. They completely without their parents' knowledge, they had written some songs. They wrote 3 songs, and they're tune writers and players of tunes, but they haven't done a lot of singing. So what they did was they had written 3 songs. I went over to their place and had rehearsals when no parents were around, just so we could rehearse them in secret. And then at a concert back in May, they surprised everybody with these songs, which 2 of them, specifically one, is about mental health, and it's just making sure that they're talking about it, and they're raising the issues, and making sure that it's not silent. So to me, it's as an artist, we can write music. We have a little bit of, depending on if you're a big artist, or if you're emerging, growing, or just any number of things. Um, we've got different tools, and or sorry again, I, yeah, we've got a different platform. Whether it's a big platform we can reach lots of people, or if it's a smaller platform and we're reaching the people near us. I think there's tremendous value to that. And I just have to celebrate and applaud Fern and Willow for doing what they do. It's very important, and they're doing a great job. But I think it's really an individual thing where we really do have to be aware of who's around us, because just checking in, making sure that people are okay, or if they're not, that's okay. But helping them along, listening to them, that's so critical. And I think I'll go with the non-technical answer, not non-technology answer, and just say, we need to check in on other people.
Yeah. So I understand that you live either in Ottawa or in the area surrounding Ottawa. I left Canada in December of 2021, and right in the first month of the next year, something very exciting happened, and that is the truckers pouring into Ottawa, and they're protesting the fact that the government has kept them locked down so much. And without being too political, I think it's a manifestation of people being very frustrated and at seeing their mental wellness deteriorate as the pandemic and the lockdown measures have to go along. So yeah, so did you what was your personal experience with the Ottawa truck drivers?
I was outside of the city of Ottawa. Sorry, outside of the downtown core. I live in a place called Nepean, which is part of the city of Ottawa, which consists of a number of different places, number of different former towns or cities. They amalgamated in the year 2000. So I'm not in the downtown core. So because we were all pretty well staying at home, and we'd all sort of figured out ways to use local businesses. So I didn't necessarily go downtown to to shop and whatnot. We weren't going out to pubs, and we weren't going, like, I'm thinking, to play music in pubs, and we weren't, I wasn't going down to restaurants, in various places. I did have to go and pick up. But only one time I went downtown, and I had to pick up a camera from a camera shop that's on Bank Street in Ottawa, which is, it's approaching downtown. There were protesters, and to not get, I'm very happy to stay apolitical on this. It was a lot of people who, like you said, were frustrated, and yet there were other people. So my experience was, there were people with megaphones, multiple people with megaphones on the block and a half that I had to walk. There were people who were if people were wearing masks, which many of us were, that they would yell, and that was a little harsh, I think, for people wanting freedom. Our freedom to not, to do what we want as well. That there's a lot of negativity that I felt there. The things, I do have friends who live downtown, and the diesel fumes were very challenging for them. So, as people, a friend of mine opened up her farm to people who just needed to get their pets out to just walk around, not letting people into the house, but just like, if you need space that's far out of the downtown core, please feel free. So yeah, it's a challenge for sure. People were fed up, and I know some people who still are frustrated with the situation. Yeah, I'm just, I think I'll leave it there. I don't want to get too much into, they said this and they said that, and who's right or wrong, because I think right now, I had views, I had views all along. I think it's time for us to say, great, we had these views. We're in a, the World Health Organization has declared that the pandemic is over, so it's now endemic. So we can say the pandemic is over. COVID's still around. And we've learned things. What, again, I don't want to put too fine a point on what, all the things we've learned, because that gets lectury. But I think now we're in the post-pandemic okay, let's all learn to be nice to one another again. I think that's really an important thing, and I hope that will improve, I should say, the mental health situation for a lot of people, because I know some people are still stuck in the sort of the headbutting, and if we can get back to maybe even not talking about it, then we can start to say, ah, okay, we're we can rebuild friendships that sometimes were strained or completely pulled apart. I know people who aren't talking, family who don't talk because they're different views. And I think, to the best of our ability, we need to mend that.
Yes, I understand. And just a side note, I visited Ottawa twice, and both times I've enjoyed it. It's my favorite place to visit in Canada. So I think
I'll tell Annika and Danny you said hi.
oh yes, I'm actually
No, I mean they don't live here. I was just sort of taking a dig at them.
yeah, I told them that I would that you told them that to send them their regards from you. But yeah. Um
Mhm.
right. So yeah, Ottawa, great city. So going back to Fern and Willow, I understand that from their mother, Jenny, that they were homeschooled, and
Yes.
yeah. And it makes me think of my years in grade school and how horrible they were. Lots of bullying from my peers and lots of not caring from the adults. And I think whether you're homeschooled or not, it's important that you have an adult who takes an interest in what you do and who really wants the best for you. And that wasn't the case with my teachers uh, back when I was in the grade school at that time. I think I can take the peers being nasty towards me. That's just how people at that age behaves. But one thing I could not believe is that they were adults who knew better, yet they did nothing. And so when I was talking to you, I got the impression that you really took an interest on people who are one generation below you. Sorry to dick at your age. You got your Fern and
It's fair.
Willow,
It's fair.
and Annika and Danny. Yeah, you were very interested in their music craft, and I find it to be wonderful and admirable. So can you share with us, the value of being interested in what young people do?
Absolutely. Well, they're the future. So and I don't think that I want to play with people who are different from me, because if it's all a group, so I'm a white straight male, fine. But as soon as you can mix it up a little bit, as soon as there's somebody else who's different, then they bring different perspectives, and it's not the same. A former partner of mine had come to a jam session in Ottawa in, I think it was 2009, and she had said that after we left, she said, "Did you realize that everybody else is a white guy here, and that there's only one person within about probably 15 years of your age, maybe 20, who knows, but like everybody else is enough older than you that, like, and there are no women here, and there and I immediately got to thinking, like, oh my goodness, you're absolutely right. And we are playing Celtic music, which, it's music, mostly mostly the music that we play is Irish and Scottish and things like that, which would mean that white people would typically have made that music, but it doesn't mean that other people can't make that music. I at that point I started to every time there was somebody coming in to a session or any space, if they were, I mean, I try to make everybody feel welcome. I do my best, but if they're young, if they're non-male identifying, if they're any number of things, that makes them possibly, it makes it possible that they might feel left out. I give a little bit of extra, I just reach out a little bit, because it's easy to reach out to a person, and I mean, we're all the same in a lot of ways. So there are tons of ways that we can all connect with other individuals, and really, if you've got somebody who looks different, I don't want them being treated any differently. If I wouldn't, I like you said, bullying, that's not okay. I'm very sorry that you were treated the way you were, especially by the adults. But you said, students can be can be, they can have a pass. Um, uh, no, not really. I think I just don't think it's okay on any level. So I'm very strongly in the belief that whatever I can do to make sure that people feel included, and it's simple. It's have a conversation with somebody. It's smile. It's say, well, please come back, because if someone says goodbye, then then there's not, we're not saying you're not welcome back, but we aren't really saying we would love to see you back again. I think there's tremendous value in that, and it's like I mentioned earlier, about reaching out about people's mental health. If you just check in with them. In this case, it's just be a person who wants to know about somebody else. And so, specific to the four musicians you'd mentioned, Fern, Willow, Annika, and Danny, they're great people. And I'll send this to Millie as well. But I've worked more with the others. They're great people, and they're people who if you just build a little bit of a friendship, I'm a better person for knowing all of them. Way better person. And their vitality, their love of music, their everything. Like they're great creators, they're great performers, they're just fun people. I like to think that I'm ancient. Yes, you've said that. But no, it's I'm older than people, but I'm also younger than other people. But I feel like I'm sort of I feel like I'm in my 20s in terms of some things. Certainly not my body, but I feel like my like my vitality is like that. And I just really love, I love working with people of just all different backgrounds, and including as many people into my circle as possible, because it just makes us all better.
Mhm. So I'm reminded of this recent incident where I'm not sure if you follow country music news or not, but I mean I don't either, but this one just sort of jumped out. Um, so this is a big country music star, Luke Combs, and he recently released a cover of a wonderful song back in the 80s by Tracy Chapman, Fast Car. So the issue of their racial slash gender identities uh, crop up because Chapman was a black woman and Combs was a white guy. And he received tons of backlash because how dare him, this white guy, covered this black woman's song. On the one hand, I kind of get that it is a larger version of the sort of like how do you call it? You said the joke first, but the other guy said the joke louder, so everyone thought that he was the one that came up with the joke. That was a
Sure.
high school thing that I've been on the receiving end of a couple of times. But on the other hand, the fact that Luke Combs covered this song signified that music can transcend these like categories that we impose upon ourselves, like racial and gender and all the type. I mean, my interest in music stems from my interest in language. It is becoming clearer upon me that music is also a language, and it's a language that transcends languages. You don't have to speak the same language as myself or anybody in, say, a given language that we don't know about, Swahili, I suppose, to enjoy music that either come from Canada or my own country, Vietnam, or the parts of Africa where they speak Swahili. So yeah, so why don't you give us your thoughts about like how this radical inclusivity of music?
So I'm not familiar with the issue of with that song. So I don't really want to speak to it without looking more into it. I love the song, but I haven't. I haven't heard the news, and so I'll look more into it. But you were saying radical inclusivity, and I think as a white guy, I have trouble saying, saying anything that I feel is saying like this should be this and this should be that. So about this, but I'll speak to my music. Someone once said, "Oh, someone once asked how much you can break a tune down. Like if it's got all these different notes, how much can you break it down or change it, and still have it be the artist's or the composer's original composition?" And people's, I know songwriters who say never change a word, and I'm okay with that because that's what they feel about their music. And I feel that, if I've written something that someone wants to change a note on, I can't really stop them. Someone can do that, and long after I'm gone, if I'm lucky, if I'm fortunate, people will still be playing music that I've written, and I won't have any way of controlling that, or requesting that could you please play the original version. So I wish I can. I hope that I could be around for long enough to see a tune of mine come back, and oh, it's played slightly differently, and oh, that I like what they did there. So yeah, so I think the ownership of music. When I said the words, I'm a white guy. There's a really important thing with the ethnic background of music that or the musicians, I should say. And I think there are two levels to that. So if someone from one ethnic background or another creates something, and then the content is specific to that, to that background, then if I step in and I take that, and if I'm shouting it louder, then maybe I'm shouting the wrong thing. Again, I don't know. I really don't know the issue, but I can speak for my music. I'm happy for people to take my music and use it as they will, listen to it, but also reproduce it, play it, and do that. But I just don't know what other people would want with theirs, and I don't know that I'm qualified to say it.
Mhm. Yes, and I guess it's a larger question of who this culture belongs to, and who has a claim for it, right?
Exactly, and so people, so in Canada's north, the Inuit folks, uh, essentially, there's something called throat singing that you may have heard. It's where it's traditionally two women who would engage in the throat singing, and it's a game, and one, a fraction of a second after the other, repeats what the one person does. So they make sounds, and they're facing face to face, and the first one to laugh loses the game.
Mm.
And something that's not okay, with and I don't want to say, with everybody in their culture, but generally, people who are not in their culture, and people who are not female, aren't supposed to throat sing. So I've got two really good friends in Ottawa, Heidi and Linda, and they are Inuit throat singers, and they, from stage, show how to make the sounds. They get everybody to make the throat singing sounds, but it's to demonstrate how the sounds are made, and not to teach people to throat sing. It's they're I love how they do it, because um, it really shows how they want to spread the information about what they do, and yet they're keeping the culture, to, preserving, I shouldn't say keeping, they're preserving the culture. And I think it's really important that we understand that in some cultures, it's not okay to like, if I were to label myself as, oh, throat singing by Graham, that's not okay to them. It might be okay to other people as well, but I think it's really important to talk with the people, who whose culture it is that you're considering, you know could I incorporate this into my music? In fact, with Heidi and Linda, we'd spoken perhaps a year ago about the possibility of my writing some tunes using some of the rhythms of their music. But I would never have gone and said and just taken their music and see if I could write a tune. I haven't gone anywhere with that yet. Just haven't had the time. But it's something that I'm excited to look into in the future. And it's something that I would do always in consultation with them. So it's an extreme respect that I have for them, for their culture. And I think if we can, rather than just going through the mechanical side of things, I have the rights, the rights to this song. I'm paying for the rights to use the song. That means that it is okay. If we talk to people in the other communities that are affected, and the stakeholder communities, if we can do that, then I think that puts us on a lot more solid footing for for being able to use, not take, but use elements of another culture. Maybe I am speaking to it, but this is all from my perspective.
Mhm. I think I think there needs to be a conversation to be had about, like, to what extent is culture universal and to what extent is particular, because the fact that we have a diversity of culture means that people value their culture in their particularities. Uh, and also the question is, you know, to what extent do other people have the, I guess, right or possibility of accessing it, right? I'm thinking about that legendary Paul Simon album, Graceland, where he incorporates a lot of music from South Africa. And well, we still think of that as a high point of American music. And maybe at that time, Paul Simon was facing backlash by people who are South African musicians. But nowadays, we have accepted it, and we even praise him for incorporating this wonderful sound from another area.
Absolutely. And musically, I love hearing Ladysmith, Black Mambazo. I wouldn't know about them if it weren't for that album, and I think that's again, speaking from my perspective, I think that's a wonderful thing that we know about people we might not otherwise know about. And so it's yeah, and I'm not sure it's easy to look through a lens, back looking back and saying, oh well, it's, he shouldn't have done that, or he should have done that, or saying any one thing now. But I think what could, and I don't know. Again, I'm not well enough informed on that album and the creation, and if there was backlash, and perhaps I should be, but not knowing that, I find it difficult to say, he should have done this or shouldn't have done that. But I think to well, to your point, talking about different people and their acceptable uses of their cultural intellectual property. I think that's an important thing. So for me, when I talked with Heidi and Linda, it was initial just talk saying, hey, I've got this idea. Would this be okay with you? If they'd said no, it wouldn't have gone anywhere, because I just, it's a respect thing. I think if more people just have that discussion, saying, well, actually, I've spoken with this person and these other people, and they say that what I'm doing is okay. It's in Canada, we've got um, a, a lot of, generations going back, where the Indigenous people of Canada, across Canada, from coast to coast and all up north to the northern coast, um, uh, they were treated very badly, and it still goes on today. And I'm where a lot of us are saying things that we hope will help. We're building bridges where we can, and I'm not saying that others aren't, but it will take a long time to restore inequality. If there ever was equality, I wasn't here 7 generations ago, but it took. It will take a long time to restore that and recover that. The word reconciliation is one that's being used a lot. We have I think we have to be cautious about just making ourselves feel good by doing a land acknowledgement and not caring, saying that I'm on the traditional unceded lands of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people, which is where I would be in Ottawa right now, or sorry, where I am right now. Instead of saying those words, and just not caring, just because it's listed on a piece of paper. If I try my best to find out where I am, wherever I go, and think about it, be present. And I was on the East Coast at the East Coast Music Awards. I guess it was 2022, and there were people, elders, from land known as that we call New Brunswick, and I started off the discussion. I was meeting with people, and I said I come from Algonquin Anishinaabe territory, and the light in the eyes, that there's acknowledgement that you're not saying I come from Ottawa. It's, I think, speaking to people on their level, it's just another layer of get to know people, welcome other people in, don't exclude, just do the best you can to, and I'm going to mess up. I will never be perfect at every single thing, but I want to try my best to respect other people's cultures, and like doing that, just saying I'm from Algonquin territory. I'm from Algonquin Anishinaabe territory. I'm on the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, wherever you are in Canada, the various different people. If you know that you're on other people's land, then you can talk to people on a different level. And I think that helps build the respect, builds the understanding, builds the respect. And I think that is a good way to start. And bringing that back to Paul Simon, I don't think that there was that thinking, in society at that point. Could we use your culture? I don't know, but I mean, it's been something that's come, at least in my circles, in the last several years, talking to people and saying, would it be okay if I did this? So I think it's difficult to look back at cultural properties like that and say, yeah, he should have done this or shouldn't have done that. But definitely addressing it and talking about it is a very good step.
I think just to tie a neat bow to this particular topic of conversation, I think that obviously Canada is generally acknowledged as a multicultural country, and it is. And I think one of the challenges of a multicultural society, which is a very new experiment and it does not exist everywhere on this planet, is the ongoing conversation about what makes what do you call a core culture, and that is the mainstream culture, and how can we make it so that everybody can be on board with it. So, for example, there's the hard multiculturalism of everybody living on the same land but practicing different culture, and nobody communicates. And there's the one in the other side of the pole, which is monoculturalism, where a dominant culture asserts itself. But I think there needs to be in between a what do you call a soft multiculturalism, where you do have a what do you call a right to affirm the origin of your own culture, but nevertheless, it is worth sharing.
I'm certainly not an expert on this, but I definitely, I mean, so my family comes from the UK, broadly speaking. So like lots, and my ancestors were here in the 1800s, but we're by far, or not by far the first inhabitants of the land that we now call Canada. There was a lot of, I mean, there was anti-Irish sentiment in centuries ago, or less, and depending on where you are. There's anti this, anti that. Recently in the States, there's been anti-Muslim sentiments. People with the pandemic, there's a whole new ugly level of that came out for people elsewhere, and I don't know where the balance is, but I think talking about it, and just acknowledging that there is a huge disparity, that's really important. Yeah, again, you've done more thinking on this than I have. Just I suspect based on that, based on your question, and I don't know how we can solve this, and I don't know there is a way to solve it maybe in my lifetime or our lifetimes, but we can work to just better understanding. And I mean, maybe music brings us together. It's I want people to just enjoy what I do and what we do on stage. I want people to be brought together, and if a whole lot of people like music, maybe that's a way to do it. But I think it's all rebuilding. It's like where there are rifts in society, whether it's pandemic related, whether it's communities, where like sometimes they're like oil and water. They're not integrated. They're on top of one another. Sorry, I don't mean to say hierarchically, but like they're separated. There's a barrier, and I don't know how to break that down. But I know I try to hang out with people who are not like me, and I think that if more people did that, sorry, that gets a bit preachy. I try to hang out with people who are not like me because it makes me a better person, and I think really that's how I'm going to live my life, and it makes me happy, because it's not, um, yeah, it's we can all do more, but it's easy. This is just easy stuff, if someone comes along and they look like they're not fitting in, maybe say hi. Like that sort of thing. I realize you're looking at a society. The question you've asked is a societal question, and I don't usually think on that level. I think what I can do and what you could do and what others could possibly do. And maybe I'm just not answering your question, but that's the best I can come up with at this point.
Okay, well, based on the name of the show, I tend to use specific examples to get into more abstract ideas. So, but nevertheless, those are some of the things that I think we should talk about. That I think we do not talk about, and at some point, that is other than talking to musicians whom I like, is another purpose of what this program's about. So I'll leave you on this one question. What does music mean to you?
It's everything. I had one of the most amazing musical experiences the last weekend. It brought people together. So I when I played with rather, and met the group Sky Consort and Emma Bierling. I'd never met them before, any of them. I had a friend who plays with Sky Consort, but a colleague of his was playing in his place, and so we got there, and we immediately there was a friendship, like a kinship through music. But then we started playing music together. Realized, my goodness, what we're doing is huge. It's amazing. And then we played on stage, and it was magic. I don't know that I've ever played something that special before. In my many years, I'll say. But to me, it was adding, like it's music can bring people together. Music can lift spirits. Music can I write I write almost exclusively happy tunes in a major key, and like there's more. I hope, I don't know that I try for it. It's just what comes out of me. There's a lot of joy when I'm creating it, when I'm playing it, and all that. And I think that music to me means everything. It can bring people together. It can bring people up if they're down. I mean, the other side, I know people who sing sad, or write and sing sad songs, which when people aren't happy is what some people need to have. and with the fabric that is the music, all music in the world speaks to somebody. The popular music speaks to a lot of people and it brings them along, and that's great. And the lesser known stuff helps other people. So without music, we wouldn't have one of the most important languages that we have.
On that wonderful note, thank you very much, Graham Lindsey, for joining us on this program.
Thanks so much, Sean.